Okay, welcome and thanks for joining the I-9 Mastery or Masterclass. We're going to go ahead and get started as I set up my screen here. And if you have any questions, please feel free to yell them out as I want to make sure you can still see my screen. All right, did you see the screen switch?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So again, welcome to the I-9 Form I-9 Mastery Class. I have been in HR for all my life, over what is that, 27 years, 28 years now. And I noticed that this is a service that is rarely talked about in the notary industry, even though we're not using our stamp. It's still a service that we're most likely trusted to do because we're used to checking IDs. So after several months, let me be honest, after about a year or so, people are like, you need to train people on how to do this. I finally developed a course and you're the benefit of that. So I'm excited that you are signed up and attending this session. I love to talk about this, but over the years, I have completed hundreds. I would probably lean towards thousands, but I'm gonna stay in the hundreds because I work for a national company and we would do orientation every Monday, if you can imagine that. So I had to do the I-9s for all new employees internally. I've survived employer audits, internal audits, external audits by ICE one time, and that was scary. And I've also trained several HR teams at my last job, and now I'm excited to train notaries on this process as well. So everything you learn today is not theory, it's based on reality, real world experience, and best practices that I have gained over the years. So today is designed to help you feel confident, knowledgeable, and ready to offer I-9 actually authorized representative services legally and professionally. So um, we will have a Q&A at the very end, but if you have a question, just feel free to let me know verbally, or you can save them to the very end. And this session, as you know, is being recorded and you will receive the replay afterwards as well. All right, so just said that. Okay, so this course is perfect for new or seasoned notaries looking to diversify their services. Like I said in the beginning, if you're a notary and you live in a state other than California, right now, California is the only state that I'm aware of that does not allow this type of service. It's under immigration, so they don't allow notaries to do this type of service. That isn't allowed. So everyone else should be offering this as one of their services under their business or side business or a side hustle, etc. And anyone that is unsure on how to fill out a Form I-9 correctly, anyone wanting extra income, of course, or stream of income, and professionals who want to be confident in compliance. So signing services that also use these services from employers or organizations that need help with their I-9s, they may go through a signing service and then they may assign it to you as a notary to complete Form I-9 with their clients. So this is something that notaries are typically sought after for this service because we have the skills to do this because we look at IDs all day long when we are notarizing our clients. So I had a light bulb moment actually last year, and again, people were asking me to do it as well. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can offer this training based on my knowledge and experience. So please let me know if you have any questions. Stop me at any time. I tend to get on the soapbox with this. All right, let's talk about the agenda. I'm going to start with the very, very beginning, the origin of all of this, but we're going to talk about what is Form I-9 and why it's important. We're going to walk through step by step of Form I-9, particularly Section 2 is where we will be in charge, or what we're in charge of as an authorized representative. And then I'm going to explain what an authorized representative role is and how to protect yourself legally. And then what most people want to know is, how do I market this service to get clients? And then I'll again close with a Q&A at the very end. So again, it's helping you hopefully to become confident. And after this, you can say you're an I-9 authorized representative expert. Okay. All right, so let's start from the very beginning. What is Form I-9 and why it matters? And I'm not making it, I hope you don't feel like, oh my gosh, I know what a Form I-9 is. I know most people are very familiar with it, at least if you remember starting any new job, not as a contractor or a seasonal person, but as a full-time or part-time employee, all I-9, all employees have to fill out this form. So this form is pretty important. It's one of the most completed government forms that is not filed with the government or any agency, but must be available for inspection at any time. So immigration enforcement and I-9 audits are increasing, as we all know. Right now, the government is is really on the side of how do I say this? Deportations right now, but this is an arm of ICE. And because they have lots of money through that budget, I can foresee that more ICE audits are going to come to companies. So if companies do not have their I-9 forms together and in order and properly filled out, it could mean fines, penalties, in some cases, imprisonment. So that's why this process is very important. It is a federal requirement that verifies the identity and employment authorization of individuals hired in the US, right? So we all know what we're in the middle of, right? To make sure that people are authorized to be here and authorized to work in companies that are based in the United States. So it helps ensure that employers hire only those authorized to work. Notaries must understand definitions such as employee, employer, and know that independent contractors or volunteers do not complete this form. Failure to comply can lead again to penalties, including fines or legal actions, making it critical for notaries to understand and support this process correctly. So I always like to stop here and ask, do you remember filling out an I-9 form when you first started working, right? So at the very least, you know it from that perspective, right? I know a lot of people are like, just give me the paperwork. I'm anxious to get started on my job, but this is one of the things that HR will help you do if you are located within the same state, same local area. Typically, HR will do this with their employees, or hiring manager. So to back it a little bit further back is the origin started in the 80s. The US was facing rising concerns about undocumented immigration. Funny how things turn right around. Back again, Congress passed a law in 1986 called the Immigration Reform and Control Act. One main goal was to stop future unauthorized employment by making it illegal for employers to knowingly hire someone who isn't authorized to work in the US. So you can see how this is very critical, especially in this day and age. This process is done right. It helps us ensure that employers, again, only hire those that have a legal right to work in the United States. Every employer must complete this form for new hires, or each new hire, and all US employers must verify both the identity of a person and the employment authorization. And guess who's good at verifying identity? It's us, right? Notaries, because we're looking at IDs all day long when we're notarizing documents, or we're supposed to be. So that's why this form is very important. Again, employers can be fined thousands of dollars for each missing or incomplete I-9. And when, again, kind of using my prior experience at the corporation I used to work for, when ICE came in, they asked for all the I-9s. You have 3 days to get them together and turn them over. And at that point, you can't do an audit. You can't say, hold up, wait a minute, I didn't get one. It has to be in order. And then they can take as much time. I don't think there is a time limit on them, but they go through each and every I-9 to determine, is this completed correctly? Is the person or all these people authorized to work in the US? And then they come back to you to say, okay, here's what we saw in these I-9s. Again, if you stay tuned to the news, when they go and do more enforcements with these employers, ICE does, you will start hearing about, okay, whether companies are doing these right or not and who's getting in trouble. So ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, can't audit a business at any time and request their I-9s going back years, right? So having the wrong documents or no form at all can be treated as hiring unauthorized workers. That's how they see that. It is a legal obligation, not an optional form. So sometimes when I ask this question, people are like, yeah, I don't remember filling out an I-9 form. I'm like, I hope that's just your memory and you actually did complete one, because if you didn't and they get audited, that could be trouble for the company. So failure to comply can lead to penalties, again, fines and legal actions. I cannot stress that enough, making it critical for notaries to understand and support this process accurately. All right, so let's talk about your role as an authorized representative. So let me ask this question, and feel free if you don't know it, no big deal. But did you know that this was even a service that could be provided by an authorized representative or an outside party to a company? Yes, this is a possibility. Normally, a company, like I said, will have an HR person or a team complete Form I-9 with their new hires. Like when I was with the company that I was at for 23 years, I was the HR representative, and I would help put on new hire orientation. And this was my role every Monday. So they had to bring in their IDs, and then I had to fill out an I-9 form with them. That's because everyone was local. Now, the company that I used to work for started going remote in 2013. I'll never forget it because it's like, can we really do this? So the first thing that we came up against is, okay, who's going to do the I-9s? In Oregon, let's say we had new hires that started there and there was a small team there. Well, who's going to do the I-9s? I think at some point, well, actually, I moved there and started the whole HR department. So I would still do them. But in other states, Texas, Florida, where we had remote employees, we had to rely either them going to find someone to do their I-9, or we had like this company that we had a contract with that did our I-9s. So you can see how it's needed, and the type of company that you need to go after or market to are those companies that hire remotely, right? Because I couldn't be in Texas or Florida as an HR representative for that company that I used to work for. So we would say, okay, here's your I-9, go have someone fill that out, help you fill it out. So that's where we come into play, because as you know, the world has changed. We were probably the first company, no, I don't know if we were the first company, but we went again remote in 2013, long before this whole pandemic thing started and people started going, having their business in remote states. But that has literally changed, right? So now people are being hired from abroad as well. But literally, you can hire anyone from across the US. Just because remote hiring is an option, companies are still required to complete Form I-9 on every employee. So what happens if they don't, again, have a local HR team in that state? They have to hire a remote person or a person that could do it with that local person. So this is where you again come in as a notary. Companies can appoint someone as an authorized representative to complete Section 2 on their behalf, especially again when the employee is new hire is remote. This person doesn't have to be an employee, so I don't have to be an employee of Kraft or of Anheuser-Busch. It could be anyone. It could be a trusted notary like us, or it could be an HR professional like myself, or a consultant, or it could be a neighbor, anyone off the street, right? Literally. Can't be a family member, but ideally they want to hire someone that is knowledgeable about the form. A neighbor technically isn't going to be knowledgeable about this form. So that's why companies will say, go find a notary, because notaries at least know how to do the I-9 portion. And that's why trainings like this is important, so that you know how to do the process as well. Because whoever is filling out Section 2 as an authorized representative, they're certifying under penalty of perjury that they saw a valid physical ID in their hands and the form is correct. So that's another important thing to talk about. So as an authorized representative, you again, as a notary, can act in this role, but not in your official capacity. You're not acting as a notary public. So you never sign the forms as a notary public. Now, some companies have gotten very clever and creative with this process. Um, I have had several, and I've had to tell a couple people, I'm like, this is not legal. You cannot ask me to stamp that document. Do not ever stamp the actual I-9 form. Now, if they have you fill out a separate form that they've made up to say that you certify and under penalty of perjury that you stamp sign the document, that's totally different. But never sign that I-9 form that I gave you in your email. And it actually says it at some point, either in the instructions or the handbook, to not stamp that form. Your duties is to physically review their original documents, their IDs, and complete Section 2 on behalf of that employer. So it's essential to understand that you're not offering legal advice, same thing we can't do for notary work, but you should follow the instructions from that employer exactly. So again, you are acting on behalf of the employer, but not as a notary, and your certifying documents appear genuine. You're not to make photocopies of their ID unless the company tells you to, or neither can you give advice, legal advice. So errors, remember, errors equal risk of fines, audits, and legal trouble for the employer. So let's pull out the form if you still have that handy. And we're going to talk about the different sections. There are 3 sections to this I-9 form. The first one is Section 1, that is to be completed by the employee. This section confirms the person's identity, work status, and must be completed on or before the first day of work. The employee also provides documents like a passport or a driver's license or a social security card. And we'll talk about how you can, what you need to do to get that from them. So we'll break each of these down, but Section 2 is your section, completed by the employer, the HR person, or if they're not local, or hiring a remote employee in another state, then an authorized representative is responsible for Section 2. This section is where the employer, again, will likely hire a notary to physically inspect the ID documents and confirm the employee is eligible to work. So if I was internal with you, I will be doing this at a table with you as the HR person. But if you are being hired in Texas, and I'm in Texas with you as an authorized representative, I'm acting on behalf of that company. Section 3 is used later for rehires or expired documentations. You likely won't get involved in that process because at that point, the internal HR person can take back over. But it's when they need to look at IDs and they're not in the same state or area with them is when we will get involved. Okay, so let's break down the next page, which is what documents are required, a list of acceptable documents. When an employee is hired, whether they're in the same state or area or they're being hired remotely, they need to get a complete I-9 form that includes the instructions, the list of acceptable documents. So if you look at that list, it's divided into 3 columns, right? It says all documents containing an expiration date must be unexpired, and documents extended by the issuing authority are considered unexpired, and employees may present one selection from list A. And what do you see under list A if you have your form handy? What's the first document you see there?
The passport. That's a standalone document.
Absolutely, you got it. So if they present a passport, that's all they need. Now, what will happen is they always want to give you their driver's license and social security card. That's called over documentation. So if they have a passport, you just say, okay, that's it. That's all you need to present. Oh, well, payroll needs to see my driver's license. Okay, well, you give that to payroll. For this process, I can only accept what's under list A. But if they hand you a driver's license, what else will they be responsible for doing? So driver's license is in B.
And then, what is it? Birth certificate?
So yeah, so at the top under list of acceptable documents, it says employees may present one selection from list A or a combination of selection from list B and one from list C. The catch with this is you cannot tell them what documents to present. That's getting into an unauthorized, illegal support. So they'll ask you, oh, what documents do you want? Okay, what documents do you have available that's original that you can present? And they'll say a driver's license. And I say, okay, great, that's from list B. Do you have something like a social security card or a birth certificate or a US citizen ID card? Do you have anything from list C? So you're asking them, you're not telling them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so when they present a passport, that's it. But when they give you a driver's license, they will need something from list C. So I'm only looking at the first line of each of those columns, but under list B, you see an ID card, federal, state, or local, school ID with a photo, voter's registration card, US military card, military dependence ID. You see all the different options. So it's not just a driver's license they can present anything on that list. And list B establishes their identity. But if they present something from list B, they must also give you something from list C that establishes employment authorization. So typically they'll have their social security card. It must be an original or a certified copy. But also under list C is a certification of report of birth, original or a certified copy of birth certificate by state, county, or municipal authority or territory within the U.S. bearing an official seal, a Native American tribal card document, U.S. citizen ID card, resident citizenship in the United States, employment authorization documents. In my years of doing this, I've seen all kind of cards being presented, but you cannot decline an ID just because you don't know what it is or you've never seen it before. You look at the list, you compare, okay, is it something on the list then, and it's unexpired or it fits the category, you must take it. Okay. So that is typical in terms of what documents are required. And then again, demanding a specific type of ID or document when verifying or re-verifying a Form I-9 could be considered discriminatory. That's why you can't say, oh no, go get your passport. I only want to see your passport. And they have their driver's license and social security card. You cannot do that, right? So you tell them, and sometimes they'll say, well, which one do you want? Which one do you want to present? Again, you don't want to get into an issue where you're telling them what to do. So looking at the list of acceptable documents, that is pretty common to get all 3, but you must redirect them to say, tell me what you want to present to me. And then all documents containing an expiration date must be unexpired. Employees, again, must present one from list A or B and C. Let's keep going then. So we talked a little bit about this. That last slide if they presented you with all three of these items, this is called over documentation, and do not make copies unless directed. So you want to watch out for fraud signs and only accept documents or ID that reasonably appear genuine and related to the person. It's the same rules we use for notary clients. So we're supposed to be looking at their ID, and one of them, um, list B, usually contains a photograph. So you're not a detective, you're not to just be over examining it, but does it look like the person that's standing before you? Does that picture look like that person? And that's what we do for notary. That's why, if you've joined any of my lives, my first thing whenever I do work with a notary client is, okay, when I do, especially when I do real estate, they always want to get to signing the documents. I say, okay, before you sit down or before you walk away, please make sure you bring your ID back. First, I'm not pulling out any paperwork. I'm not doing a thing until I get their ID and I take a look at it. I look at them, I look at the ID, and I may look back at them again just to make sure it matches. I've only had like one or two where it's like, oh, if you're the person in this ID, and we're supposed to stop. Like if they do not appear to match their ID, you're not supposed to move forward with that, just like you would with a notarization. So you have to pay attention to that. You have to watch for any fraudulent signs. So let's say you got one of these, and I have one when I was working for that company. I'm like, I'm sorry, I cannot accept this. This doesn't appear to match who you are. And I can't remember what happened after that. I don't think we ended up hiring him. Something was off with that. But I've only had that one time in person, and then I thought I had one situation when I was online. So even online, you kind of want to quickly get through it, but you have to pull that screen up and look at them in the video. And sometimes if they start doing weird things, or like you can only see the top of their head, I say, sir, ma'am or sir, please, can you pull the camera up so I can see your entire face? Like you have to be aware of anything that could be potentially fraudulent, or that person doesn't match who they are in the ID. You have to stop. So beware of that. Watch out for fraud. So let's go through each of the sections now. Okay, so if you're on page one, let's flip back to that. And remember, section one is to be completed by the employee no later than the first day of work. It can be completed as soon as they receive a job offer, but not before. Someone in one of my sessions said, oh, someone made me fill out one before I even had a job offer. I'm like, I hope you didn't fill it out because that sounds fraudulent to me. So remember, it's the time frame. Well, it's really for the employee to remember. Once they make a bona fide job offer to you as an employee or to that employee, then they can say, okay, here's the I-9, here's all the paperwork that you will have to fill out as a new employee. So they will fill out the section in advance, and it's fine if they do so in advance after accepting a job offer. But again, it should not be before. And this section includes personal information and the employee's attestation of work authorization. So if you look at section one, it says employees must complete and sign section one of the form no later than the first day of employment, but not before accepting a job. I mean, it says it clear as day on there, right? And if you look towards the top half, that box, it says, I'm aware that the federal law provides for imprisonment and or fines for false statements or the use of false documents in connection with the completion of this form. I attest under penalty of perjury that this information, including my selection of the box attesting to my citizenship or immigration status, is true and correct. So this is how people could get arrested or get fined or penalized because if they're making false statements. So they will fill this out, and they have a block for, last name, first name, date of birth, social security number, email. They must check the box. You are not responsible for doing anything in section one. So if they say, oh, go ahead and check it for me. Nope, it's your responsibility. You must sign it, and then you must put the day that you're signing it. Okay. So that's section one. Any questions on that?
I do have a question real quick.
Yes.
For the first session, when they fill that out, their name has to match exactly what's on their documentation. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, you're right. Yep, you're right. So just like with a notary appointment, and sometimes people will have nicknames, or like I could be going by Roz instead of Rosalind. I am responsible, you're responsible for looking to see, okay, does the name match what's on their ID versus what they're putting down? And if they're not doing that, then technically they need to start over with a new form, or request a new one. But you're right, it should match. And the one thing to watch out for is the juniors, the seniors. That is pretty critical as well. Great question. Section 2. So the employer or the authorized representative, I'm reading that gray box, must complete and sign Section 2 within 3 business days after the employee's first day of employment, and must physically examine consistent with an alternative procedure authorized by the Secretary of DHS, and we'll talk about that later, documentation from list A, and you see the words "or" in big letters. So if they have something from list A, that's it. If they don't, then they must have a combination of documentation from list B and C. Enter any additional documentation and additional information. Box, see instructions. Okay, so let's break this down. So let's go with the Social Security, I'm sorry, the passport that someone presents to you in our make-believe here. So where would you put the passport information as the authorized representative?
List A?
Yes, so let's fill out the columns. Let's pretend like we have a US passport before us. So document title 1, what would you put there?
Passport?
Yep, I usually put USA passport. If you look at a passport, it definitely, whatever the title is, write that down exactly.
Yeah.
And then issuing authority. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was listening. I didn't push mute. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry. Issuing authority. So you don't have to be totally exact. You can ask the person, but I usually say some passport agency or post office or whatever. I usually just put passport agency because it could be anybody, not anybody, but usually a typical agency like the U.S. Postal Service will do that. So that will be in column, I'm sorry, row issuing authority, U.S. passport agency. Document number. So if you have looked at a passport, there is a number at the top right or either lower by, I think it's top right for US. So you would write that number out exactly in row 3. A passport has an expiration date, usually the bottom left-hand corner, you would fill that in, right? So we have 4 rows to fill in under list A for a US passport. That's it. And then let's drop down to the certification. It says, I attest under penalty of perjury that 1, I have examined the documents presented by the above named employee. So you're not just accepting it, you're looking at, okay, let me look at the picture on the passport. Let me look at the person. Does it match? Okay, move forward. Number 2, the above listed documentation appears to be genuine and related to the employee name. Does it match the person? Is it a legitimate looking passport? That's all we need to do. And then 3, to the best of my knowledge, the employee is authorized to work in the United States. That will tell you if they are or not. So let's look at the rows following that statement. It says first day of employment. So technically, you would ask that person or you would know from that employer when their first day was. Hopefully, it was within 3 days ago. But if it wasn't, you're going to be honest. Do not fudge or predate or post-date anything. It must be exact. So if they started on the 4th of August, you must put down the 4th of August, even though it's the 16th and it's late. That's on them, right? Last name. So that would be your last name, your first name, and title of employer or authorized representative. So what title would you put there? And so I would put Smith, comma, Rosalind, authorized representative. And then I will sign I will sign my name, Rosalind Smith, and then I will put August 16, 2025. Now, for the employer's business or organization name, I would not put EVS Notary, even though that's my business. I would put whoever hired me to help this person, right? So if it's Craft International, I would put Craft International, not EVS Notary or your business. And then the next box says employer's business or organization address, city, state, zip code, not mine, the employer. Okay, does that make sense? Any
Yeah. So we'll
questions on that?
put the employer's information that hired us, the contract, yeah, that hired us to onboard them. And then
Yep, you
in
got it.
the first section, we'll put our last and first name and then authorized representative. But if we actually worked for the company and we was in HR, we'll put HR, right? Okay.
Yep. Yep. So when I work for Enterprise, I would put Smith, Roslyn, Enterprise. Then I would sign my name and put the same date. And then I would put Enterprise name and then Enterprise address. Now, if I were to be hired by Enterprise as my own independent authorized representative, I would still put my first and last name, authorized representative, sign it, and put Enterprise name and address. I never put my notary information, my own address on these. You're being hired to do this by someone else. and that is who needs to be on this form. Yep, you got it. All right, any other questions regarding that? So, one thing I didn't mention, you can use common abbreviations. So let's say they gave you a driver's license, a Missouri driver's license. So where would you put the Missouri driver's license? What column?
Document title.
So you will put that under list B.
List B.
Yeah.
For
So
the column, document title, and then put list. Yeah. That
yep. So
issuing authority will be what?
So I will put in document title as driver's license, and then issuing authority I will put maybe Missouri DMV or something like that, or DMV.
But we can abbreviate it to DL.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yep. So you can use common abbreviations that most people will know. Most people know driver's license as DL. Most people know Department of Motor Vehicle as DMV. Most people know state abbreviations. So you can use those common abbreviations. Yep. And then on the driver's license, there's a number there. So you put that in row 3. And then there's an expiration. You would put that in row 4. So what would you do if they give you a Social Security card? What column would you go, and how would you fill that out?
Okay. We'll do list B.
Right? So look at your list of acceptable documents. So I handed you a driver's license, and we went through that for list B. So now I also gave you a Social Security card. So where would you find that?
The first thing you gave me was a driver's license, and then the second thing you gave me was a Social Security card. Okay, that'd be list C.
Yes. Yep. So let's fill that out. So what would you put in the document title?
SSN?
Yep, you can do that. Well, actually, SS card.
SS card?
Yeah, or a Social Security card.
Okay. And then vital records, would that be the issuing?
Yeah, you could do that, or the Social Security Administration. I think it has it at the bottom of some Social Security cards.
Okay. So I need to use vital records or SSA.
Right. Yep.
Okay. But what about like, I used to view at one of my jobs, I used to view documents like passports, Mexican birth certificates. I used to look at all that stuff. But what about if I was presented a Mexican birth certificate? How would I? It's not vital records. What would their?
Okay, so let's look at the list of acceptable documents, page 2 of that I-9. So you said Mexican?
If they was from Mexico.
Okay, guess what? Guess what? That may not be acceptable because this is for the US.
Right.
So unless you can see it there on any of these lists here, you cannot accept it.
It has to be all US. Right. Okay.
Basically US based documents because you're hiring in the US. So if they handed you a Mexican what'd you say, birth certificate? So I would look at, okay, let's look at the list. I would say certification of report of birth issued by the Department of State, that meaning US. Or number 3 says original or certified copy of birth certificate issued by a state, county, municipal authority, or territory of the US bearing an official seal. So I wouldn't think that would fit anywhere on the list of acceptable documents. So I would say, I'm sorry, employee, that doesn't seem to be on the list of acceptable documents. Do you have something else? Let's look at the list together, or something like that. That's how I would go back to the person.
Okay. What about if a person has an I-10? I know you're familiar with I-10s. The I-10 is like almost similar to SSN in order for them to work there. With it. So I only validated I-10s. I either rejected them or approved them. So how would that still be a Social Security card that they present us if they have an I-10?
So look at the list. Look at list C under a Social Security card, unless the card includes one of the following restrictions: not valid for employment, valid for work only with INS authorization, valid for work only with DHS authorization. Does that card, does the I-10 have that?
What I'm asking is, do I-10s, do they actually put that on a Social Security card? That's a dumb question, but I want to say it's no, because you have to be born in.
Yeah, so I don't make that, oh, yes or no. I just look at this document. Where show me the document that you have, is what I would tell the employee, and let's look at lists of acceptable documents. Do we see it on here? If it's not acceptable.
Okay. Okay.
That, yeah, I just make it that clear and plain to them. And then they can go and talk to HR, their immigration attorney, they can do whatever they need to do. But this document, this list of acceptable document, that's all you're authorized to accept. So I've had green cards, and that's acceptable. Um, but sometimes those have a expiration date on it. So I, as HR, I would just put it in my calendar to say, hey, we need to re-verify you once that date comes or before that date comes in order for you to continue working in the US. Remember, everything is based on US. So it just depends. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Great questions.
No, I was just using random. I was just thinking of random stuff.
No, no worries. But the one thing that will get you out of anything is to say, find it on this list. If you can find it on this list, I can accept it. If you can't, I cannot. And I'm going to refer you back to your employer to go from there. Is how I will handle that. Okay. So we completed section 2. Again, that's your responsibility. It must be completed within 3 business days of the employee's start date, and you must physically examine the document. So what if someone tells you, oh, I have my driver's license on my phone? How would you handle that?
That's not acceptable.
Correct. It must be in your hands, and it must be an original or a certified copy that you can see that appears to be genuine. Okay. Section 3, supplement A, preparer and or translator certification for section 1. If they happen to need a translator, this is what they would fill out. So typically you wouldn't have to worry about that, because unless you speak another language, let me not assume, you wouldn't have to do anything with that one. And then page 4 is actually the supplemental B, which is a re-verification and rehire. And that was formerly section 3 back in the day, I remember. So this section is rarely a task assigned to notaries or authorized representatives. If you're asked to assist with the re-verification or rehire scenario, follow the employer's instructions exactly. Whoever is hiring you, make sure you understand what they're asking you to do for this section. This may involve completing a new section 3 or assisting with a new form I-9, depending on the situation. Just ensure that all fields are correct or accurate, and that there's re-verification aligns with the original employment documentation. So let's say they gave me a green card that expired on December 31st, 2025. Well, before December 31st, 2025 hits, they need to have something new or updated to say that they're authorized to continue working in the United States. And if they bring me something, that's when I will fill out this re-verification section. Again, they'll likely go through their HR department, so you won't have to do that necessarily with them, but I always like to explain what this document is. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. All right. So another thing that I am still shocked over is that the government, during the pandemic, we didn't really have a choice, right? They, for the first time in years, allowed this alternative process. But the catch is a lot of people are doing this without being in the E-Verify government system. So E-Verify is an online system that helps confirm employment eligibility electronically. So for a remote I-9 completion, employers enrolled in E-Verify may do an authorized live video verification. So some people are saying, well, why can't HR departments just do this process with their employees? Why do they need to hire us? Well, guess what? Not all employers want to use E-Verify, a government system. I don't know why. It's so much quicker and easier, but a lot of companies don't want to be that tied to the government. So if they're not an E-Verify, they can do remote online I-9s. So that's why we're still needed in this process, because a lot of people just skip this and they'll just say, nope, I'll still deal with a person that I'll hire to do this face-to-face. So if someone is, and likely the reason why I just kind of go past this section pretty quickly is because if a company is an E-Verify and they have an HR team, they don't need you to do this. They don't need us to do this because they can do it as a remote HR person. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't really talk about this a lot because you technically won't be involved in this a lot, because their own internal HR will do it remotely if they have this set up. If they have this set up, that's the catch. So always follow the employer's instructions if you happen to get involved in a remote I-9 process. And again, from a remote alternative, if you go back to page 1 of the I-9, you see that big box that says additional information under section 2. That is where they need to specify or check that box that says check here if you use an alternative procedure authorized by DHS to examine documents. Like I have a HR client for a nonprofit that I'm the HR person for, and they have people in 4 different states. So I've used this process as an internal HR person and doing the I-9 that way. But not to confuse you, because most likely you won't get involved in this because they can do their own process this way. All right. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about some common misconceptions about I-9, Form I-9. So I'm going to run through a couple of these and we can talk them out loud. But I do want to, if you're able to respond, are you supposed to notarize Form I-9? What are your thoughts on that?
No.
Correct. The Form I-9 does not require notarization. In fact, the USCIS specifically says it should not be notarized unless the employer has separate paperwork requiring it. It's another document. You can stamp any other document, just not this I-9. Good. Employers will need to send the completed Form I-9 to USCIS or the government. Remember we talked about that? What are employers expected to do with the I-9 is to keep it on file within their company. So even if they're doing it with us as a notary, we're going to send it back or scan it back to them, and they're responsible for keeping that I-9. It never goes anywhere else until or if ICE comes in to ask for copies of them to audit. So it stays in-house with that employer. Okay. What about the company must always be the one to complete Section 2?
Yes.
So what do they need us for then?
You said the company? No.
Yes. Okay. Yep, that's false. So the company can hire authorized representative. They don't always have to be the person filling out Section 2. Section 2 says employers or their authorized representative. Kind of a trick question there. All right. Form I-9 is just another HR form they bore you with on the first day of employment, not a legal requirement. What are your thoughts on that?
It is a legal requirement.
Absolutely, it is required. Even though we're not giving this form to the government, Form I-9 is required by federal law, and failing to complete an I-9 form on each U.S. employee can result in fines for violations. Copies of IDs must always be kept with Form I-9.
No.
Correct. So companies have an option. Either they're keeping all I-9 form copies or they're not. So they can't say, oh, Jose looks like he may not be a US citizen, so I'm going to keep a copy of his, but I'm not going to keep a copy of Brittany. You can't do that. It's either all or nothing that a company has to do to keep those copies. And I mean, when I mean copies, I mean copies of their IDs. So they must have a form on everyone, but either they can decide as a company to keep ID copies or not. Okay, and that's not your concern because you're turning it over to them once you're done with your section anyway. Okay, so here are some common misconceptions about us as authorized representatives. You must be a notary or a lawyer to act as an authorized representative. What do you think about that?
No.
No, anybody technically can be an authorized representative. A neighbor, a friend, a notary. There's no specific or special license required, but the employer is still liable for any mistakes made by that person. That's why they'll tell a new employee, go find a notary, because technically they're expecting us to know this process. At the very least, we know how to check IDs. Once you act as an authorized representative, you become liable. What do you think about that?
No.
No,
Yes.
yeah, it's kind of weird, right? So if you're making blatant or bad decisions and mistakes, you're always liable. But for this purpose, it's the employer's responsibility to get this form completed with their new hires. Now, how they go about that, hiring us, that's still on them, right? So just remember, as a authorized representative, we are signing under penalty of perjury that we reviewed the documents, that statement I read, and that they appear genuine. But legal liability for error still fall on that company because it's their fault for hiring someone or having an employee hire someone to fill it out. Unless you intentionally committed fraud, it's not on you. So that's good news, right? So I always say, just be aware and make sure you're filling the form out right, and then you won't have anything to worry about. But if something is wrong with that form, or let's say they found the person to be fraudulent and you still did your due diligence, you looked at the ID, it looked genuine, it looked like the person, that's on them. That's not on you or us as authorized representatives. So that's helpful to know, right? But you don't want to contribute to any liability for sure. Okay, so you can decide which documents the employee should show you.
No.
Right. It's the employee's choice which documents they present. You cannot suggest or request specific documents. It could be considered discrimination if you do. So again, they will give you the kitchen sink. I got a driver's license, US passport, and a social security card, because most of us have that. And you just say, great, now which one do you want to submit? If you do the passport, that's the only thing you need. But if you want to submit your driver's license and social security card, you'll need those two things. And I'll just put it right back in their hands. The new hire can complete Form I-9 at any time, even weeks after the start date. What are your thoughts on that?
No, so they supposed to do it within what, 3 days?
Yep, you got it. 3 business days. So if and then I've had situations where they forgot to do this process, the employer kept reminding them, and then they come to me and they'll say, "Oh, can you backdate this to, 2 weeks ago?" I'm like, absolutely not. No. So you do when they're before you, that's the date that you're signing. That's it. That's all you can do. So I never backdate or post date or anything. Should you keep a copy of every Form I-9 and IDs that you complete as an authorized representative?
No.
No. Unless the employer says make a copy or get a copy, do not keep any of that, because if you recall from section 1 of the I-9 form, there's a lot of personal identifiable information, PII, their social security number, their date of birth, all that personal information. You don't want to be responsible for that. So I have a company that hires me to do these I-9s, and they'll tell me to scan it in after I'm done. And then once they get approval or they submit it to that company, they'll come back to me and say, go ahead and shred. And I have a shredder right here to the right of my desk. And I go immediately to shred, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm using their personal information to do anything with. So unless the company tells you to copy and scan, don't do it. Just give it right back to the employer or follow the instructions on what they want you to do. Okay. Any questions on any of those misconceptions or questions?
No.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about common mistakes and red flags. So we talked a little bit about the form, and if you look back at the form that you have that I sent to you via email, if you still have it handy, do you see the upper right-hand corner where it says USCIS Form I-9? What expiration date do you see there? Expires date.
5/31/2027.
Yeah, so that's the latest version. And then at the bottom left side at the bottom, you'll see Form I-9 Edition 1, January 20th, 2025. That's the latest version. So you want to avoid, if you happen to see, I think there's one other form that still may be valid, but make sure they're using the most recent up-to-date form. Now, if you see that, you can say, hey, employer or employee, do you think you have the right form? Because, it looks like this is from 2023. So it's still their responsibility to give you the right forms, though. So it's on them. Don't delay. Section 2 must be completed within 3 business days, as you stated, from the date of hire. So if they present it to you late, it doesn't matter. You don't go back 3 business days. You do it the day that you're before that employee, even if it's late. Reject expired or incorrect documents, and never forget to sign and date. So make sure you're looking at the driver's license like we normally do, or US passport. Is it still valid? Or did it expire a year ago or 2 days ago? If it expired 2 days ago, you cannot use it, right? It has to be a valid date. Correct errors like a notary. So from a notary perspective, whenever you make an error or you see an error on a document, you just do one little horizontal line through it. You don't let them, a lot of people like to just make it where they're just what am I trying to say? Scratching through all the documents and it looks messy. You just do one little single line through it, and then to correct it, then you make the correction, whatever you're correcting, and then you initial it and you date it on this I-9 form to make any corrections. And if there are too many mistakes, like everything they're doing is a mistake, that's a messy form. So I would advise you, I always tell people, start over. If it's too many mistakes, just go ask for a new form. Because what happens is if ICE picks this up and they can't interpret, like, okay, what is this? Did you even put the right information on here? Sometimes it gets too messy, and it gets too messy for people to interpret. So you might as well just start over. What to do when documents are missing or incomplete. If an employee's documents are missing, they have 3 business days from their start date to present valid ones. So let's say this happens a lot too, where someone forgets that their driver's license expired last week. And they're like, oh my God, it expired. Okay, well, do you have something else from list B? Do you have an ID card, a school card, a voter registration? Like there's other things on list B. No, no, I don't have anything else from list B. Okay, well then sounds like you need to go to the DMV and get a renew or do your ID over, right? So you can accept the official copy back from the DMV. So let's say they go today and they come back to you with that temporary ID driver's license, that is acceptable. But I always tell them when you get the original, you need to let your company know that you have your original. And that's where that re-verification process will come into play. But as of right now, you either need to have a valid ID or that temporary ID with a new expiration date. We already talked about that for remote employers. Keep detailed notes and ensure timely follow-up through to remain compliant. Do you have a hardbound notary journal, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you would not put this in I-9 appointments in your notary journal. You know why? Because you're not a notary doing this process. So I have a specialty journal that I made up, or you can just, wherever you want to keep track of your notes, just put it somewhere else, not in your notary journal, because you're not doing this as a notary. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So I-9's journal needs to be separate, of course, because we're not notarizing. Yep.
Right. I have a specialty journal. So for my field inspections, my I-9s, anything that's not notary or notarized, I put in that journal. And you can get a notebook to do that, right? It doesn't have to follow any rules like the notary stuff does. So you can go get a binder, a spiral notebook, and keep them all in there. Just
So,
something where you can keep track of it.
so normally, when you put in the journal of your for your I-9s to keep track, you just put the name of the company with the person name and the date that you did it.
Yep. Yep. I just put down I-9 for Brittany, for Craft, Incorporated, or whatever the information is, on August 16th at 12:20. That's what I would do, just so I can keep track that, yes, I did an I-9 for this company with this employee. Yep, that's it. And you can do whatever you need to do with that. Again, we're not bound by law to do anything. It's just suggested to keep track of those appointments. Or you could do it electronically. It doesn't even have to be a notebook. So and then for remote employees, adhere to the employer's protocol. Some may use video verification. Again, if you get involved in a remote process, I highly doubt it you will, but you'll just follow the instructions. Okay. Okay, so again, your responsibilities as an authorized representative, remember, you are not the employer. You're working independently for that employer on behalf of that employer, but make sure that employee knows you're not a part of that company. You're just doing this process for them. Again, keep a log of I-9 jobs completed, ask for instructions in writing. The first thing I do when I set up an appointment with the person I'm doing I-9 for is, did you get instructions from your company? They'll say yes. I say, bring it. Make sure you bring it, or if you can share with me, or whoever hired me will usually give me the instructions as well, because you want to follow those instructions to the T. Do not notarize the I-9 form. You can notarize other things, but not that specific I-9 form. And do not keep copies unless told to do so by that employer or third party. And if you are keeping copies, it should only be until they release you to say everything's good. Then you need to immediately shred it. Do not leave it laying around, because Social Security numbers are on it. Personal data is in it. So I always say it's good to have a shredder, or however you get rid of documentation. General tips for completing Form I-9. Ensure the I-9 is legible and free of marks like highlights or staples that could obscure text. Remember, the point is to read the form and make sure ICE can read the form. Whoever gets the form needs to be able to understand it. Treat all employees fairly and without discrimination. You're not saying, Jose, you must bring in your green card, and everyone else can bring in their driver's license and social security card. You can't tell them what to bring in the first place, and you definitely don't want to make a difference between people. So always use the official I-9 Central site for USCIS for updates and resources. So I think I put that in that email as well, but you can always go to that site, uscis.gov/I-9-central. That's a handbook. That handbook is like 200 something pages, and I'm kind of narrowing it all down to this whole process, but there's so much more details in that book if you ever want to uh, go back to that or go to that resource. And then review your work, just like we would as notaries. We want to make sure that we're filling out the forms accurately, signing properly, and staying organized to maintain full compliance. Okay, let's talk about the big opportunity for notaries, right? So companies that hire you remotely need you as a authorized representative. I'm trying not to say notary because we're not doing a notary process, but again, it's a government required form for every new hire. So every U.S. employer is legally required to complete this form, no exceptions. And when companies hire remotely, they often need someone local to verify identity and look at their documentation in person and complete section 2 of that I-9. Again, that's where you come into place as an authorized representative to fill in the gap. And I know there's a call for a lot of companies to go in-house, to come back in the building. Some people have really scaled down. They no longer have an HR department. A lot of companies are relying on HR consultants now. So they may not have an HR person to do their I-9s. Another reason to, well, I'll talk about that in a moment, but to reach out to HR people on LinkedIn or companies that you know are still hiring remotely across the US that may not live or hire people just locally, but maybe hiring people across the US. So these companies can't fly HR to those different states to verify identity. So they need, again, someone like us that they can trust that's professional and local. And as a notary, you already have the credibility and skills to serve as a person to verify identity because of our role as a notary. So it's a lucrative add-on service. So that's why I say everyone should have the opportunity to learn this process and add it to their business because you never know when someone will call on you. I'm not saying it's going to be the service that's going to get you rich, but when you do get called, you'll know how to do it and you can do it quickly. It's one of those services you can do in less than 10 minutes and you can typically make between 30, I think the lowest I've seen is 20 and the highest I've seen in this local area is like 50 or 60. Now, some other states, I don't know why it's so much higher, but Missouri tends to be kind of right in the middle, with 30 to 50 being the typical range that I've been hired for. So you could also add on travel. You can add on, if someone says, I need you, like my deadline's tomorrow and I need you to be here in the next hour. Well, you can add on an urgency or a rush fee for that. Or if they're asking you to scan and or ship it back for them, you can add on those type of services and or fees. So it's not time consuming. The appointment again could take you less than 15 minutes to do. And then you give either the form back to that employee or you ship it, or I'm sorry, scan it back to that employer and you're done. That's it. You don't need to notarize anything. You just verify an ID, completing the form and returning it. And this is often a standalone service, so you can bundle it with your mobile notary work. Remember, you may charge $20, $30, $40 for the form to complete the form, but you got to get there. Unless they're coming to you and you offer those services at your home or wherever you work, you can add a travel fee. So that's where it kind of you can add on the different types of fees to make it feasible for you and your business or your side business. So it's low risk and high trust, right? So the liability is not on us, even though we want to do it right, it's still on the employer. And some employers just don't know who to call. So sometimes they'll just give the form to the employee and they're like, I don't know who to go to. But if you have advertisement out there on your Google page or LinkedIn to say that I'm an I-9 authorized representative, people will call. I put it out there on Nextdoor, if you know what Nextdoor is in the local neighborhoods. I have it on LinkedIn. I have it on my Google page. I do it every once in a while on my other social medias, and you will be surprised who calls you to say, oh my God, can you help me? Yes, I can. So it's about building ongoing relationships. Advertisement does not stop with one time. You got to keep doing it for people to see it. So you can offer your I-9 services to help expand your brand or build your business and do it in easy ways to market and implement. And again, we can do this because we're not just a notary, we're a professional partner in helping employers stay compliant with federal law. So however you want to word that to say you are now knowledgeable to help people complete their I-9 forms, now they just got to know that you offer this service. So let's talk about that, marketing your service. So from a marketing perspective, do you have a Google business page? Yeah.
Yes, I just created one the last week.
Oh, good. Okay.
A website and
Good.
I got a virtual
Okay.
business card and I'm working
Mhm.
on my business card.
So on my business card, I added a backside. You probably can't see it, but I put on the backside of my business card, my mobile online notary service certified loan signing agent is on the front of my information. Then on the back, it says professional services, remote online notarization, real estate documents, apostille facilitator and courier service, estate planning, wills and trust, power of attorneys, titles, bill of sale, school forms, form I-9 employment verification is also on there. So whenever you introduce yourself or you're networking, I always say I'm a mobile and online notary public, and I also offer other services. And if they say, "Oh, what other services?" I may start with apostille, depending on what I think they will be interested in, and then I hand them my card. Here's a list, but I also do apostilles, real estate, Form I-9, and one of them will get them right. One of them will be like, "Oh, yeah, I need an I-9, or I knew someone that needed an I-9." So put it out there. Use your social media, Google business page, and notary directories to advertise in. This business, you cannot be shamed to say what you do, who you are to any and everybody. Just like you said, you sent your digital card out to your friends, blast it on your social network and do it in a rotation where they know. So I've gotten to the point now where Facebook is my least favorite now, and I'm barely on there. But every once in a while, I get a ding or a text to say, I put your name out there. Someone was looking for a notary, and I said, Rosalind's one. You want to get to that point, right? Where people know that you're a notary. And the only way they'll know is you keep talking about it. So you said you had a website, add a section to your website that you do this. Network with other HR departments. You know where other HR departments are? People always ask, like, how do I know where HR departments are? You know where they are? They're on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn.
Well, I gotta create. I think I have a LinkedIn. I never posted. I did it for work, but yeah, never posted
Yeah, and
anything.
I know you're in that situation where you probably don't want your employer to do it, to see it. So you just have to figure out what's
Oh,
your
I don't care
workaround for
because
that.
we have to report that we have to report that we have another job because of
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as I'm
Well,
not
and
doing no taxes.
yeah. So put it out there. And again, you can't just do one post. It has to be multiple posts over time for people to know, feel they can trust you. See, that's why I tell people don't just be, and I'm kind of low on it right now. Don't just be a one-hit wonder on a social media site or LinkedIn. You can't just put one post out there and think you're going to get flooded. Well, they want to see that you're active. They want to see that you're knowledgeable. They want to see that you commenting and being engaging on those sites as well. And that's how people gain trust. And hopefully that's how I gained yours. But staffing agencies, if you know that enterprise hires remotely, right? You go when you start getting on LinkedIn every once in a while and pay attention to the post. Look to see who's saying they're hiring remote. Then go find the HR person or go find that company and send them a direct message. I do it every once in a while. I probably do it every quarter for those companies that I know hire remotely. And I'll just say, hey, just as a reminder, I'm an I-9 authorized representative if you ever need me in the St. Louis, Missouri area. And again, it's not instantaneous, but they will remember when they need you. So network with them. If you join a local chamber group, I'm a part of the Greater North County Chamber of Commerce. That's a good group. BNI groups. I know that's a little more expensive, but wherever you get a chance to network and promote your business, do so. And be sure to list I-9 verification services clearly on your website and business profile, and people will remember when they need to hire someone to help them. So this will give you'll always have access to this recording, but continue learning and reviewing the training materials. If you need to go over it again, you have that website that you can go to for USCIS and the Form I-9 itself. I keep it in my notary bag, a copy of one in case they just need one. And then again, partner with the companies that need remote help and maintain clear records of each employment and appointment and stay informed again on legal updates and e-verified changes to remain compliant and credible. you hear that ICE is now starting to go into these companies and they're having issues or they need help re-verifying people that they didn't have an I-9 form on, you just got to keep your ears and eyes open to understand what the need is and how you could possibly help anyone. And again, track your appointments to protect yourself and the companies you serve. So again, I kind of talked about these a little bit a moment ago, but just like any other service you should offer, you should include I-9 authorized representative services too on your Google business profile. That means you need to have a picture, an update, services that you offer needs to be on your Google business profile, your LinkedIn profile, your social media platforms like Meta, IG, LinkedIn. Where are employees? Where, if an employee got hired as a remote employee and they need to find someone, where would they go? They're going to Google it. They're going to ask their friends on Facebook. They may ask someone on TikTok. And if someone knows that you are that person or they see your profile, you could get notified. And again, I've gotten lots of people off TikTok, not for this service, but for other service. And then add it to your business card. It's always a good thing, or your virtual card. Or you can create simple flyers and email marketing. You'll be surprised, like I get this up and down with tattoo parlors. Sometimes I'll go in and I'll have a business card. I'm sorry, a postcard, and I'll give them that. It also includes I-9. You just never know where someone could be in a tattoo chair and be like, I just got hired. I need to find a notary. Well, they'll remember, well, someone gave me their flyer or their postcard and they have that information on there. Again, you need to just promote every service that you offer to everybody, even if you think they don't need it. They will at some point. And then attend again, chamber meetings or BNI groups and events, pricing and packaging your service. So when I first started, I had a script, I had my pricing down. And my philosophy, you don't have to follow this, is I always like to start low just to kind of get a feel for, okay, is this something that people will go for? What are other people offering? And I think I started off at 30 for I-9s. Again, I'm not telling you what you have to do, but this is what I did. And now I just demand 50. I'll just state what my price is at this point. So I built up from 30 and I went to 50 on this thing. So it just depends on what you want to do and where you are. But I had to get out of this corporate mentality of only doing my little job. Now I'm a whole business, and that means I got to market my whole business and services. So I can't be shy on telling people that I do this, or I put a post out there on Nextdoor. Nextdoor is valuable because it's your people in your local community, right? That could be down the street. I've done a notary for someone on the backside of me before because they found me on Nextdoor. School starting, so I put a school posting out there. I try to rotate my I-9 postings because local people will tend to find someone local. So everywhere you go, just make sure you're advertising. Okay. And then resources, the uscis.gov/I-9 Central should be your main source. I gave you a copy of the most recent Form I-9. You can also find it on their website. It also includes instructions, list of acceptable documents, and on their website is that handbook for employers. It's thick. I try to read it once every year, or if changes come out, but it's a lot to take in. But this is the main gist of what this process is, why we need it, and how you can help. So I will close it out. I know we're way over, but I will stay if you have any questions. Now is the time. That's a great idea. If you think someone is hiring remotely or need local help, go in there and I always say the worst they can say is no, right? And you can just say, okay, thank you for your time. If you ever need anything, if you could take my car. Sometimes they're like, nope, I don't want your car. Okay, well, have a nice day, and you just keep it moving. But the times that they will need you and they take your car, you will get a call. So yes, do it. Do it. You have my name and number. If you ever, have questions, just feel free to call me as you're building your business. I definitely don't mind helping. I like to help other people. And when I first started, like I was a notary in the late 90s for this company, I never knew this side of things. So I went into this whole trying to learn everything, take everybody's training. You just need to get started. That's it. That's what I learned my lesson out of. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it scared. And I'm just going to market myself. That was not my main role. And when I worked at that company, we had silo departments. So we had a marketing department, we had advertising, like we had everything done for us. So I'm learning all this stuff I just learned all this stuff on my own. And it was hard at first, but I realized I probably should have reached out more, asked more questions in the beginning instead of doing this the hard way. So I always like to be that resource.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And if I ever see you in the, hallway, at you
Yeah.
or whatever, thank you so much. It was great. I love this class.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, thank you for signing up. And again, if you ever have any questions, especially about this process, just give me a call or send me an email. Okay.
And your starter bundle is 129, right?
Yes. So if you say TikTok is 10% off as well. And that probably is a good opportunity too, because we talk more about how to get your business up and running. So thank you for your time and opportunity here.